You already know what you should do. You've known for weeks, maybe months. And yet, you're still here, still in your head, still thinking about the thing you haven't started, still running through every version of how it could go wrong, still finding one more reason to wait. Not because you're lazy, not because you don't care, because something inside you won't let you move, and you don't fully understand why.
You research everything before you do anything.
Not a little, everything. You read the reviews. You read the reviews of the reviews. You open 17 tabs and close 14 of them. You make a list, then a better list. You rewrite the message 3 times and don't send it. You imagine the conversation, start to finish, before it happens. Then imagine it going wrong. Then imagine recovering from it going wrong. Then decide the whole thing is probably a bad idea. So you wait. You tell yourself, I'm just being thorough. I'm being smart. I'm preparing. But the preparation never ends. The plan never feels ready. The moment never feels right. So the thing, whatever it is, stays exactly where it's always been. In your head. Perfectly planned, never done. Here's what it actually feels like inside. You have an idea, a clear one, and immediately your mind splits. One part of you gets excited. The other part starts asking questions. What if it doesn't work? What if it works and then falls apart? What if people notice? What if they don't? And both parts talk at the same time, constantly. You replay a conversation from last Tuesday. You rehearse one that hasn't happened yet. You think about what you should have said, what you'll say next time, what they probably meant, what you probably missed. Your mind is never quiet. Even when you're doing nothing, especially when you're doing nothing, your brain is working overtime, analyzing, predicting, protecting. And it exhausts you. Not physical exhaustion, something deeper. The kind of tired that sleep doesn't fix. Because you've been running mental simulations all day without moving an inch. And then comes the moment you turn on yourself. Maybe I'm overthinking this. Maybe it's actually simple. Maybe I'm the problem. So you try to just do it. You open the thing. You start. And within 30 seconds, your brain floods again. Wait, but what about, did I consider, what if, you close it. You tell yourself, tomorrow. Tomorrow becomes next week. Next week becomes when things calm down. Things don't calm down. And now there's guilt layered on top of everything. Because you haven't done it. Because you knew you should. Because some part of you is angry at yourself for being this way. Why can't I just do things like everyone else? Why does everything feel this heavy? Why do I make it so complicated? And you genuinely don't know. That's the part that hurts the most. Not the inaction, the not knowing why. Here's what no one told you. This didn't start with you being weak. It started with you learning to survive. At some point, probably earlier than you remember, you were in a situation where getting it wrong had real consequences. Where a mistake meant embarrassment, or rejection, or someone's disappointment, or silence. That specific, heavy silence. And your mind, your very smart, very fast mind, learned something. If I think about it long enough, I can prevent the bad thing from happening. If I prepare enough, I'll be safe. If I never start, I can never fail. That wasn't weakness. That was intelligence, adapted to a painful environment. Your overthinking was once a form of protection. It kept you from making moves that could hurt you. It kept you 3 steps ahead of everyone else's reactions. It made you careful, precise, sensitive to risk in a way others simply weren't. But here's what happened. The environment changed. You grew up. You moved. The people changed. The stakes are different now. But the system didn't update. Your brain is still running the old software, still scanning for threats that mostly aren't there, still treating every decision like the consequences are catastrophic, still protecting you from a danger that passed years ago.
You are not broken.
You are not weak. You are not lazy. You are someone who feels the weight of things that other people don't even notice. You think about outcomes before they happen because somewhere inside you, you learned that mattered. You carry an awareness that most people don't have. You see angles. You see risk. You see nuance. While others leap without looking, you are already 3 moves ahead. That is not nothing. That is not a flaw. That is a kind of intelligence that the world rarely stops to appreciate, including you. You've been so busy calling yourself stuck that you forgot to notice how much you actually see. The problem was never that you think too much. The problem is what you were taught to do with all of that thinking.
But let's be honest about what this costs you.
Because there is a cost. There are things you didn't start. Things you wanted. People you didn't reach out to. Opportunities you watched close while you were still deciding whether to open them. There are versions of your life that only exist in your head because that's the only place they ever got to live. And that's a real grief. Not dramatic, not loud, just quiet. The kind of grief that shows up at 2 a.m. when your mind won't stop replaying the decision you didn't make, the message you didn't send, the thing you almost did, and the loneliness of it. Because you can't explain this to most people. You can't say, I spent 3 years thinking about something and never did it. Because they'll say, why not? Just do it. And you'll nod and feel even more alone. Because you know it's not that simple. You've never been able to explain why it's not that simple. And carrying that, unexplained, unnamed, for years, that is heavy. That is exhausting in ways that words barely reach.
So here is the reframe.
The thing you've been getting wrong, not because you're stupid, but because no one ever said it clearly. The problem is not that you think too much. The problem is that you were never taught that thinking and not knowing can exist at the same time. You were taught, somewhere, somehow, that you had to be certain before you could move. That you had to know the outcome before you could begin. That the risk had to be 0. That you had to be ready. But readiness isn't a feeling that arrives. It's a feeling that gets built by moving, by taking the first imperfect step, by letting the outcome be uncertain and moving anyway. The people who seem fearless, they are not thinking less than you. They are not smarter than you. They are just more practiced at acting while afraid, acting while uncertain, acting before they're ready. You have been waiting for a certainty that thinking alone will never give you. And that is not your fault. But it is something you can change. Not by thinking less, by letting your thinking coexist with movement. By starting small, imperfect, uncertain, and letting the clarity come after. Because it does come after. It almost never comes before. You don't have to have it figured out. You don't have to be ready. You don't have to know how it ends before you let it begin. Your mind is not your enemy. It never was. It was just trying to keep you safe in the only way it knew how. But you are safe now. Safer than it knows. And the next step doesn't have to be big. It doesn't have to be brave. It just has to be one step. One imperfect, uncertain, unfinished step. You've spent so long inside your head. You know every corner of it. But there's a whole life outside of it that is still waiting. Not judging, not disappointed, just waiting. And it doesn't need you to be certain. It just needs you to show up.